everyone, and welcome to another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D. My guest today, I've had on a couple of times. I see him on the James River every once in a while. He's always out there. I don't get out there as frequently as possible, but he's does a lot of different types of either fishing or hunting. In fact, he had a successful season doing some upland hunting, then right into stripers. And now every time I turn on my Instagram, I'm seeing him go wild with clients for gar, bowfin, and snakeheads. Let me bring in my guest. And today's guest is Reid Parker of Current Culture Fly. Hi, Reid. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Matt.
Oh, my, thanks for coming on. I mean, like you are, I don't know if the fishing is that good. You're like a self-promoting machine. Literally, every time I open Instagram, there's Reid. There's a gorgeous gar. There's a huge, I'm like, whoa, he's on fire. And to your credit, I mean, it's like literally awesome stuff.
It's been a fun time, and I think a lot of people are just kind of, coming around to these fish, as really just a fun fish to target on a fly rod. All three of them, gar, bowfin, and snakehead. And, they're pretty close to pretty much all of the major metropolitan areas kind of here in Central Virginia. So I've been lucky enough to bring people out who want to target them and are just as excited to fish for them as I am.
Yeah, and we're going to talk all about the differences of them, what they look like, and what you're doing with them. But can we roll back for a second? I started off by saying your upland hunting season was really successful. I think part of that was the fact that the winter wasn't super harsh. So tell me a little about your upland hunting, because the last time I had you on, it was you and your dad, Robbie, and I mean, it was a great show.
Yeah, we had a great season, which, I kind of feel like any good hunting season, I kind of need to tip the hat to the dog work.
Right.
It's all about those dogs. Those dogs did great. They got into just really, really good shape. Sometimes at the beginning of those hunting seasons, say October, you can have some of those warm days, which can be tough on the dogs. But I think kind of like you said, we had a pretty cold winter, which I think made for good flight conditions. The birds were flying well. The migration of the wild birds was awesome. And the dogs were just focused, locked in, and in great shape all year. So we had, it was a really, really successful season, very safe, very fun season.
And you do upland hunting all the way through March, or almost the end of March sometimes.
A lot of time, yeah. So with the hunting preserve season, so the Virginia hunting preserve season, so this is upland hunting that takes place on like private preserves where these birds are stocked, not too dissimilar from, say, like a stocked trout stream.
Right.
We're all pretty familiar with like private stocked trout streams, kind of a similar situation going on there. That season, I think technically comes in September and goes to the end of April, but most hunting preserves in Virginia, they start around October, wait for that weather to cool off some, and then they usually wrap it up in March. Just kind of, again, gets warm. It's not great for the birds. The birds don't fly as well, and it's not great for the dogs.
Right. And then you're coming out of that, and before you know it, I mean, you're just living life on the James River, because striper season is in, and of course, shad season as well. And this year, I mean, stripers were just, I mean, it's like they were jumping in the boat.
Oh my gosh. It was a great season. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of, other anglers who fish it a lot, and we all agreed it was just, as far as numbers went, it was just a very, very consistent season. It was very easy to stay on top of the fish this year. I think we had, like we were talking about earlier, just good, consistent conditions. The river, we never really had a big high water event that changed things around. That can really throw things off on the James. It was just, we were able to stay on top of the fish like all season long.
Yeah, it seemed like we finally got that big push of rain when the water temperature was really way too warm to start to go for stripers, because it really would have stressed them out. So it was kind of nice to maybe flush them out at that point.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, we wrap our trips up, I mean, we kind of push them back earlier and earlier every year.
Right.
Once that water temp starts getting close to 80, we're done.
Right.
There's a lot of studies with the delayed mortality of those fish and those high water temps. We don't want to risk it. So we kind of cut our trips off a lot of the times mid, sometimes even early May. And this year was more like a early May cutoff for us. I think our last trip of the season was like May 8th, I think. And we were done. So.
And then once the water really starts to warm up, that's when you're switching to your warm water species. And I mean, you're going after some really unique fish right now.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I mean, again, we kind of the gar thing takes off pretty quick. We can pretty much come right from fishing for striper to fishing for gar. And where I'm fishing them is a lot of tidal river systems. So, those gar are found pretty much anywhere on the James, and any river that drains into the Chesapeake Bay is going to have them. I mean, I've caught them, up on the upper James, smallmouth fishing.
Right.
Friends, just, kind of out of luck, catching them on, 10-pound tippet, which is funny. But where I'm fishing for them is in these tidal rivers, where they just get into these tidal creeks in the hundreds. So when they're on their spawn, there's just so many fish around.
Right.
If you did the red fishing on flats with Simone.
Yep.
It's certain areas, certain situations, it's not too dissimilar. You can kind of get up onto these flats and some of these tidal marshes.
Yeah.
And you can see 100 fish up on a flat, not quite schooled up like redfish, but you're seeing lots of groups of fish. Get lots of opportunities.
So it's like 5 fish here, 5 fish there, and so smaller groups, but consistent groups.
Exactly. Yeah. So when they're spawning, they'll be in what I call like a pod. So you'll have one large female fish with like maybe anywhere from 3 to 4 smaller males on it. And they're kind of cruising around. Those fish typically don't eat when they're actively spawning, but you always find singles or doubles that are either taking a break from spawning, they haven't spawned yet, or that they're spawned out, they've already spawned. And those are the fish that you want to find. So I tell people a lot of the time, if you find, say you find 100 gar, we only need 5 of them to eat, to get your gar, because they do have that hard bony mouth. They're hard to keep on the hook, but if you can get 5 of them to eat, you're going to land at least one of them.
We're going to get to gar in a second, but there's also bowfin, and I just think it's an interesting fish. I think you've referred to these before as almost like a prehistoric style fish.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. Both with bowfin and gar, they have a very like prehistoric lineage. So they really haven't evolved really since the dinosaurs very much. They've kind of stayed the same since the dinosaurs were around. So they're the top dogs in their ecosystem.
Are they? So they're the alpha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say so. They've just evolved in some of these for, a million years. It seems like they've just been around forever. So they're very comfortable in their environment. They don't spook away as easy. There's not much that eats them. I'm sure, occasionally an osprey or an eagle might try to get one, but you got those hard scales and they're slippery. They got that tube-shaped body. Like even when you try to hold one, they're hard to hold sometimes.
Yeah. And so are these also in the tidal fisheries as well?
Exactly. Yeah. So you'll find them in certain rivers. Like, I've caught them at the fall line before, and there's plenty of them there. It kind of just comes down to how you want to fish for them. They will hold deep in certain situations, but you find they're just so tolerant of a multitude of different environmental conditions. Like they're very tolerant to low dissolved oxygen. So you'll find them, way back in these tidal creeks where there's all this lily pads and sandy bottom or muddy bottom, where you're not seeing much else. Like you're probably not seeing really even any snakehead back there sometimes. You're not seeing that. So like if I'm going to put people on these fish on the fly, I want to go to these places where like they're the top dog kind of in their area, right? They're not really competing with other species, say bass or catfish, or sometimes I like to come to spots they don't even have snakehead in. To where I can put clients in front of a lot of fish, give them a lot of opportunities because they're not easy. They eat pretty readily. They're not necessarily spooky, but they have a really hard mouth. So it can be really difficult to drive that hook in, get a good hook set on them, and then play them correctly. So there's a lot of little nuances to kind of have your success with the fish. I mean, there's a very good chance I'll put you in front of lots of fish if you come on the boat. It's just the angler kind of needs to perform after that.
So okay, so let's talk about that, right? So I mean, so I've gone out with Simone, and of course he's like Maddie, we can't get super close because we're gonna spook them. You said that bowfin aren't super spooky. So does an angler have a better chance at maybe using a 40-foot cast? He doesn't need that 60 to 70-foot perfectly rolled out cast, or we still got to get a decent length out.
Yes. So if with bowfin specifically, if you could give me 40 feet in like a hula hoop sized area, right? So if you can land that fly within 2 to 3 feet of that fish on the correct side of the fish, within 40 feet, you're in the zone. I feel pretty confident that you'll.
Okay.
Now that being said, there's plenty of times that, like, if you play your cards right, the boat positioning is right, we're not knocking stuff around in the boat, we can get right up to that fish and have them eat boat side a lot of the time. Again, they're not necessarily spooky.
Okay.
You can certainly scare them by, I think like, stuff falling in the boat. Sometimes I've seen them spook away, but for the most part, they're pretty curious. I've had them like follow the push pull before in the marsh, which is always kind of funny. Pulling along, kind of looking forward, and I look down and there's a bowfin following the foot of the push pole. They do stuff like that. They're very, very curious fish. But with any fish, I think it would be kind of foolish to say that you can't scare them, because you certainly can. But I can get people a lot closer shots on a bowfin than you could say redfish, or we'll talk about later, even snakehead. But
gotcha.
Bowfin get you pretty close to.
And so what are you using in terms of, what weight rods, and are these, big like streamer flies? And I'm not asking you for the secrets, but I mean, just, so for the purpose of conversation.
Yeah, for sure. We use, anything from 7 to 9 weight rods. The 9 weight in these marshes has become just a really, really common tool. We're fishing a lot of heavy cover and pretty heavy tippet a lot of the time. So that 9 weight, I think, is kind of key. And sometimes we're throwing, flies that are a little tougher to cast on, say, like a 7 weight. I got a couple flies here.
Oh, cool.
I'm going to bring on camera. That's a jerk changer. So I use a lot of like Blaine Chocolate's designs, a lot of changer style flies. So that's, a jerk changer. And then a lot of times I've been tying just these like 2 hook kind of game changers. So one with like a stinger hook on it. And that's a good all around fly. Bowfin a lot of the times will eat that back hook. Gar almost every time eat that back hook. So these like 2 hook changers, I feel like for my fishery is a really good versatile fly. It's a really good searching pattern. Use frog flies. My favorite frog pattern of all time is the Dahlberg diver. It's a deer hair fly there. It's if you're familiar with a conventional lure, the Whopper Plopper, the same guy who designed this fly. So he knows his stuff. And, I don't think I have any on me in this box here, but sometimes with bowfin, like crawfish flies, something that kind of jigs, they honestly look a lot like redfish flies. I take a lot from like what the redfish fly guys are doing there, and do very similar pattern stuff with hourglass eyes, bead chain eyes, and you're just kind of like jigging it in front of them. And that kind of works really well with those short shots.
So obviously the frog with all the deer hair is a floating top water. Are the other ones just under the top water column, like high water column?
Yeah, so they're all subsurface. So, the game changer flies, they're all what I would call like almost like a suspending bait fish kind of fly. Sometimes I'll put a piece of shot on there. But most of the time, if I wanted to get down a little bit more, I'll fish it intermediate line. But if I had to bring one line out there, it would just be a standard floating line.
Standard floating line, and just let it subsurface. Line.
Yeah. Yep. Something with a big, heavy head to turn these heavy, not super heavy, but just like not very aerodynamic flies. You want something that can kind of
turn it over.
Exactly. So that 9 weight helps with that as well. 8 weight's fine. 7 weight, if that's what you got, that's what you got. I mean, I've caught bowfin on 6 weights, kind of silly. I do think that 8 and 9 is like the way to go. If I had to have one, just that 9 weight.
And so you said that they're kind of around lily pads and the sandy bottoms. So are you casting actually into the pads? You're casting like just short of the pads and then kind of luring them out?
So if you imagine like a lily pad field, we'll call it, right? there's always these little pockets and little holes kind of in these lily pad fields, like on the edges. I want people to cast kind of either kind of on the edge of those pads or in those little pockets.
Gotcha.
As those fish, depending on the tide, depending on the water levels, will be pushed back into those pads. And so, especially on the conventional side, a lot of the times you'll see people throw weedless patterns into that stuff. That's just really, really hard to do on a fly rod. You can make weedless style flies, and I certainly tie my fair share of like weedless style frogs and all that
Right.
stuff, stuff like that, which has the hook point up and kind of behind
Yep.
all that, like deer hair. That being said, it's your fly line gets up in there, the leader gets up in there. It's kind of hard to work it back to you no matter what. So I like to work the edges of that vegetation.
Gotcha. And then what is the take like, and what is the fight like on a bowfin?
Yeah. Bowfin are cool, man. A lot of the time I love to sight fish for them. Like that's when people get on my boat, that's what we're trying to do. I'm really trying to like look for optimal sight fishing days, good sunny days, to be honest. I mean, I know cloud cover, there's a lot to be said about cloud cover and fish coming out to eat. But I think if I'm going to sight fish, I want a good, bright, sunny day.
Right.
That's across the board for any species. So I want a good, bright, sunny day, good sight fishing conditions. And then, not having to put in super big casts, like within that 40 feet range. Sometimes it's right off the boat, just kind of drop that little fly like right in front of its face and just kind of drag it and drop it, and they'll take it kind of on that drop. So sometimes you'll find them, less than a foot of water, less than 2 feet of water. And when that happens, the take is pretty explosive. It's super fun. A lot of times they just kind of hammer it with a bowfin. They had that long dorsal fin on their back. That one's kind of folded down in that picture there, but they got this long dorsal fin. And when they're kind of like thinking about hitting something, that dorsal fin just starts to wave a bit. And they're either going to do one of two things. They can hit the like reverse button. So there's not many fish that can just swim straight back like that. Most fish have to kind of do a weird little thing like that to go back, or they have to completely turn around. A bowfin can just like wiggle that dorsal fin and reverse. So when that happens, they see something they don't like. A lot of the time when I see that, it's, you pause the fly for too long, or you just showed them something that they didn't want. But half the time when they wiggle that fin, they're going to pounce on it. And they freak out. Like when you poke them, it's a good, strong fight. I mean, like most freshwater fish, they're not peel and drag or anything, but they're going to make some runs. They're going to make some good, quick runs. And they're going to bulldog you pretty hard. And they're just going to splash and jump. And sometimes the fight doesn't end when you get them in the boat. They keep freaking out.
and the tail here, I mean, obviously gives it a lot of power to try to get away and give you that bull run as you were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, if you look kind of how that tail attaches to the body, it's nothing but muscle right there.
Right.
It's just pure meat. So yeah, they've got a lot of leverage. They got that kind of tube shaped body. I know there's probably a biological term for that that's slipping me right now, but
it's all good.
They've got a lot of leverage is really what I'm kind of getting at. They're kind of just built to fight. They're tough fish, super cool, like just very inquisitive, very curious fish, which I think makes them super fun to target.
The next fish I want to talk about is gar, and they're so interesting. The very slender bodies. You're releasing one here in this video with this long snout, and the snout has got like thousands of razor teeth on it. I mean, just incredible. In fact, I'll bring up a picture here. These are so cool. Same type of water again. We're talking tidal water, and looks like you're fishing right against, big weeds, big tall grasses and all.
Yep, exactly. So pretty much, I call these fish the big three because, we can fish for a lot of the time, depending on what clients want to do. We can fish for all three in a same general area off of the same boat launch kind of thing. We can do all three, and gar are a really good way to kind of keep the action hot. bowfin and snakehead on fly rods are challenging. They're hard, and sometimes we all have those days where we're like, man, we're just not finding them, or they just don't want to eat, or we can't get it right. Something's happening.
Mhm.
Are just always there for me. So I can get them to eat pretty consistently. The unique challenge with gar, I think, is hooking them and getting them to stay on that hook and fighting them. So I don't use rope flies. I know some people like to use rope flies.
Mhm.
The idea there is you use like a fly tied with untangled rope or some sort of material without a hook that tangles in those razor sharp teeth there. I've done it, just don't love it. You have to play the fish really delicate. He doesn't really feel it, so they don't fight as hard, and you can't really put pressure on them or you'll like yank it out. And just from like a conservation standpoint, if you break that fish off when it's got that rope in its mouth, they can't ever open their mouths ever
Oh,
again. They starve to death, or sometimes even suffocate because they can't come up and gulp air properly. Because all three of these fish are air gulpers. They come up to supplement their oxygen intake by coming up and gulping air. So that's another reason why I like to use hooked flies. They are difficult to both set the hook and keep the hook pinned,
mhm.
but I think that provides a really unique challenge. That's what makes these fish fun to land, and I think when you get that fish to hand, it makes it all the more special, in my opinion.
And when I'm looking at this picture, I'm going to bring it up full for you as well. I mean, this looks like it's all bone and teeth. So that's why you're saying it's really a trick to set the hook. Is it kind of a strip thing, like, or is I mean, I'm not trout setting, am I?
Definitely don't want a trout set. You will not get good hook penetration on a trout set. You want good strong strip set. And I tell folks, once he's on, I mean, not that they won't go on the reel and take
Mhm.
drag. If you get a really big fish, I'm talking, when these fish get up into like the 40+ inch range, they almost fight differently. They jump more and they do go on these longer runs. So there are instances where you might need to take them on the reel, but what you really need to pay attention to with these fish is your rod angle when you hook them.
Mhm.
What I've seen a lot is people set the hook on that fish and they bring that rod kind of straight up, right? That's a pretty common thing with fly anglers,
Right.
especially if you've spent some time trout fishing. Is you set that hook and then you're bringing your rod up here and you're stripping like that. You don't want to do that with these fish. You want good side pressure. So
Interesting.
I tell clients like get that rod tip like down, keep a good bend in that rod, but get that rod tip down. You need that kind of side pressure on them because you bring that rod up even a tad bit, especially as they get close to that boat. Like you hardly ever have great hook penetration in their mouth. Like it's a lot of the time not even in the barb. So it's like if you lift that rod, it's a spring and it's just going to come right out. So yeah, there's two ways they get hooked. That one in that picture there, that was a great hook set where that hook was like that back hook was in that fish's mouth.
Mhm.
Side of it, the hook was set inside the mouth. That fish wasn't going to come undone. They get hooked there, and then in the very back of their mouth, it's a little bit softer.
Gotcha.
There, so they get hooked there a lot. On the very point of their snout, it's a really tough place to set the hook. That's like the boniest part of their snout. I think they use that part of their snout to kind of like poke through weeds, poke around. So I think it's very calloused on the tip of that snout there. So super tough to set a hook there.
Yep.
So you want, ideally you want those hooks kind of set towards the back of their mouth, which is kind of what I was saying earlier, where it's like a lot of the times you'll get to tangle with a few fish. So say there's certain days where like, all right, you hooked maybe 5 or 6 gar, but you landed 1 or 2.
Right.
That's pretty standard numbers a lot of the time with clients, but you get the fun part, you get the fight, you get the jump, but the goal of course is always to land one, get one to hand. And you see just how cool they are when you get them up close. They don't even look like a fish almost.
No, I mean I look at this on the big picture here and it's got that bowfin style tail, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you said before like it's all muscle to the tail. And then
Yeah.
I mean such a slender body. I'm sure they must just kind of, race through the water and I'm guessing, when they fight and they turn sideways, it's not like they're displacing a lot, or they're not a broad fish, right? We have a lot of girth. So yeah, just pretty interesting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's those when they eat that fly, it's sometimes they'll kind of eat and turn, but a lot of times they kind of just come up and eat that fly and just kind of sit, and then like right when you set that hook, they just again freak out. It's a pretty fun fight. They jump a lot. They'll tail walk. Just a super exciting, fun fish.
Really? So they'll tail? I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. They'll tail.
So how many clients then go, oh, and it's gone? Like, because I mean, anytime you see a fish tail walk, your mouth drops, the rod goes up instinctively, and everything's all over at that point.
Yeah, it happens a lot. I'd say most clients, if they haven't fished for gar, I mean, everyone loses some. I mean, I took Simone out there, Keegan and I fished together for gar a lot, and we kind of switched places. One person on the pulling platform, one person on the bow, and we both miss fish all the time. They also love to like run at the boat when you hook up. So your rod go like they just I don't know. I feel like they know like what to do sometimes. Like sometimes if you're casting off the tip of the boat, they'll kind of eat as you're pulling that fly towards you, and you have some slack, and you might get them for a second, and they run towards the boat. And then the fly just pops right out. But to your question, there's a lot of people where, yeah, they get that take, they set the hook, and the fish either jumps, makes a big splash, or tail walks, and the client is just dumbfounded. Like, whoa! Because it just happens so quick.
Of course, because, I mean, especially, I don't care how many times you do it, anytime you see a fish, come up and do that, you're just like, and then you got to remember, you're still fighting this fish. Well, not anymore. You're not, because you put 40 pounds of slack in the line and it's flying.
Exactly. But the good thing about gar is we usually find them. We find a lot of them.
Right.
So that kind of May to late June is like a great time to find them shallow. Is when you find a lot of fish shallow. You can almost always find a couple. On some shallow flats or up in a shallow creek, but May and June is when you find them in like really, really dense numbers.
Gotcha.
Shallow. And then we kind of it happens in the like blink of an eye. And what I've noticed is when the some of these creeks or some of these flats get all this hydrilla on them, all this grass, this like invasive submerged vegetation on these flats. I don't think those gar like that very much because they come off those flats. So you can still find them. It's not quite sight fishing as much if you want to find, your numbers of fish. Again, we can still kind of grind it out and sight fish to those handful of fish. But a lot of the time you'll find them on, oxbows and these deep bends of creeks and rivers. And you'll see them coming up to roll in Gulf Air a lot. And as long as it's relatively shallow. So when I say that, like I have a threshold. So if they're rolling in say 5 feet of water, 5 to 6 feet, I can catch those fish. If they're rolling in say 12 to 15 feet of water, we struggle to catch them because they're just coming up to roll and they go all the way back down. So there are times I've utilized some, slower sinking lines for them, but to kind of get down a little bit deeper to them. But for the most part, as long as I can find those fish on a bend, in about 5 to 6 feet of water, we can catch them.
And so when you're saying they come up and roll, is it tarpon-like in that respect?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, it is kind of tarpon-like. So they roll and they gulp. So I think they come up and roll and they are gulping air when they do that, but they're coming up from deeper water and just taking a quick gulp and going back down. And then there's ones that you see that are kind of swimming around hunting, and those kind of ride higher in the water column. You see one kind of like riding high, and they kind of come up and just kind of gulp their little beak, and they kind of go back down. So it's more of like a soft roll. So that's kind of like the two kind of, I guess, gulping behaviors they have. Is they have the roll, kind of like a tarpon, and then they just come up and snap their beak.
And same thing. I think you kind of mentioned it. You're staying with the 8 or 9 weight rod for them, and you're going floating line. And then we saw the flies. I mean, they look like 6-inch type flies or something.
Yeah, so they're not super big. They're probably anywhere. That's one here.
Okay,
that's just a 2 hook
Yep.
finesse changer. I don't tie like, on certain changer style flies, I pay way more attention to my taper and like the shape of it. With these gar flies, I think they mind as much. So as long as they have there's two hooks on them, but I'd
Mhm.
say, yeah, anywhere from 4 to 6 inches. They are primarily eating, golden shiners, mud minnows. They're eating bait fish. I mean, which is kind of funny to think about when
Right.
you look at them. They look like they could kill pretty much anything they want, but they can't open their mouths very wide. Believe it or not, they just have a very like unique way of kind of, I guess, killing and hunting and digesting their prey. I think since their teeth are so sharp,
Right.
when they grab that prey, they don't have to like thrash it around or kind of like inhale it in their throat like other fish do.
Right.
So a lot of the time when they're eating these flies, they're just kind of eating and stopping because they're like, I've got you in my teeth now. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Kind of,
That that makes sense. Yeah, because at that point the teeth are clenching it, and
exactly.
yeah, it just
Yeah.
kills it that way. Interesting. Really interesting stuff here. Okay, so snakeheads. This is I've always heard it's an invasive species, but I guess and you make a living on it. They are an awesome fish to go for. I just never think about it, and
Yeah,
it's very
man,
popular.
they're so much fun. They are a very challenging fish on the fly rod. I think they're pretty challenging in general for a multitude of reasons. I think they respond to pressure very, very quickly.
Okay.
They learn quickly, right? Like I can almost tell when I'm in a creek and I'm seeing fish. There are times I'll come up in a creek and it's just loaded with fish, and I can tell it's been fished a day ago, because they're super spooky. I can't get anywhere. Like I'm doing two false casts, and the second false cast, they're scared, they blow out. And sometimes it's a mood thing, but I think a lot of it's pressure. They just respond to pressure very rapidly. And there's, a good contingent of folks that fish for them,
Right.
and a good contingent of folks that go and bow fish for them as well. And that mostly happens at night. I do all my fishing during the day, starting early in the morning. So sometimes they can be very spooky. So that's like, I think that's probably the hardest. That's the biggest challenge we face as fly anglers with them, I think, is not spooking them.
Right.
So as much as I love to sight fish for them, sometimes those days where you can kind of back off that structure and put a good long cast and just kind of like beat the pads, fish wood. Those are a lot of times the days that we catch our fish. Again, love the sight fish for them. I had a guy out yesterday. Again, had a good sunny conditions, kind of pre-front. It was a few hours before that storm rolled through, which I love fishing for anything in pre-front conditions. I think like bass, bowfin, snakehead, anything pre-front, I'm feeling pretty good about. And he did great. And again, it's like getting this weird numbers game. I mean, I think he hooked up with 4 fish, but landed one. So it's like one of those things where, I mean, this is his first time fishing for snakehead. So he did great. We had that good feedback, but I told him, I was like, man, there's some days with clients, I go 8 hours to get, 2 eats sometimes. They're just very, very challenging, but extremely rewarding, very cool fish. I know they are invasive fish. So I do have folks sometimes that want to keep them. I put most of mine back, to be honest.
Yeah.
I have yet to really read a conclusive study that shows they're, posing any sort of major environmental impact or really
Gotcha.
outcompeting any native species.
And so I think you hit on a couple of things there. So, whereas bowfin, you said you can get within 40, 45 feet, get me into a hula hoop for accuracy, and we're good. It sounds like this one, as you said, we're going longer casting where we got to be near structure. And so longer casting. And we also got to be pretty silent too, because you said they're super spooky.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking with Keegan about this because we were fishing clients like the same day. And he was like, man, I feel like they were just like spooking at our conversation. Like we weren't doing anything else. And like, we just kind of be talking, which I've noticed, I think, not to get like, too superstitious or too like ninja-esque in approaching these fish, but it's like there are times where I'm like, I kind of lower my voice sometimes when I'm talking to my clients, almost to like just above a whisper if we're right around fish. I don't know. I think it makes a small difference, and I think these fish, all those differences end up adding up to a fish or not having fish. So.
And are you, I assume because of the spooky nature, you're polling for these fish. You're up on
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's kind of two approaches. I either, get up on the polling platform, and that's more like depending on where I'm fishing. Because there are situations where, these flats aren't very big. They're not like a big redfish flat. They're pretty small in a creek. And so a lot of the times I can get my boat out into the channel on the trolling motor and have the angler cast back to that flat, right? Okay. And sometimes that's the better approach. Sometimes if I'm on that small flat polling, I'm kind of running up parallel to the fish. It's just hard to get. I think I can get good shots that way, but we spook some fish that way, depending on the situation, depending on the creek. So I utilize both, and I think doing both is it keeps me versatile. I can kind of approach these fish.
And so the flies on this one as well. I thought there was a picture. There it is with Simone with the fly. Yeah. Same fly. I mean, so that's why you said it's very easy for you to go bowfin gar snakehead in the same day because you're in same water. So it kind of offers the client a variety of, hey, let's go for this and let's make this happen.
Yeah, that 2-hook game changer there is, that's a very, very versatile fly. There is some more specific stuff I'll use, per species. I use a lot of those jerk changers for snakehead specifically. They just love them. They just have so much wiggle, so much action. You don't really have to do a whole lot from the angler standpoint, just like little strips, and just has a lot of just natural action that I found those snakehead love. Snakehead, I've found take frogs really well. Again, that's all kind of depending on if they're in the mood for it. Sometimes sight casting on a frog is not ideal. Sometimes if I'm going to sight cast, I'd rather sight cast either like a bait fish pattern or even like a small crawfish pattern.
Gotcha.
But I'd say if I had to have one, we catch most of our fish subsurface, but catching them on the frog is like what it's all about. Like everyone wants a frog fish. Everyone, kind of wants that topwater take.
Yep.
Catching them in the pads. That's kind of like the textbook snakehead.
Gotcha. And my understanding is that this fight is really, really fun, like power personified.
Yeah, it's great. It's very similar to bowfin. It's just very, very thrashy. They're going to try to, they want to run away from you. So they'll run either towards the drop off in a channel or they'll run towards the pads a lot of the time. Sometimes, again, they'll run right at the boat, just kind of do crazy things. Again, not really a fish that peels a bunch of drag, but a very, very strong fight, very, very strong bulldoggy fight. They do not want to come to the boat.
Right.
They are a super fun fight. The take, however, can be pretty subtle, I'll say. Don't get me wrong, there are times, especially on frogs, they'll kind of explode on it, but a lot of the times it's a very subtle kind of sip. Like if you've done much like smallmouth bass fishing on top water, like on bugs, when you had that kind of like almost like toilet bowl flush kind of sip.
Yeah,
they do that a lot. But it's a very distinct sound when they make it. It's like a suction cup, but a lot of the time it's not a very like hammer hard take, which is what we find subsurface as well. Like I tell people, it's like if we're not sight casting, like if we're just kind of blind casting, working structure, I'm like set at any resistance, because kind of like those gar, a lot of it I've found, and again, there are instances where they'll kind of hit it and plow through it, but a lot of the time they're eating that fly and they're just chomping it and sitting. Sometimes they're not chomping it and swimming through it or turning. Sometimes they'll just kind of chomp it. And so that's all you feel is that little tick. And like a lot of the times that's your fish. It's not a very explosive take subsurface like people think it might be.
And so when you get that subtle take, that's the hard strip, because this also has a pretty bony mouth, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's, almost it's always a really, really hard strip set. And I think, again, that low angle on all these fish, I think, is kind of key.
Mhm.
Any fish that has, that hard mouth and you're kind of working against physics there with hook penetration, you want to keep that rod angle low. Muskie guys will tell you kind of the same thing. When you hook the muskie, you never want to bring that rod tip up. You want a good side pressure, keep it low. Very similar to that.
Gotcha. So what is the length of season? You started fishing for these in May once the water temperature hit like 80 plus. How long are you fishing for gar, bowfin, and snakeheads?
Yeah, so I'll kind of work backwards because snakehead, I feel like I find they're very temperamental to temperature a lot of the time.
Okay.
So like last year, for instance, I cut my snakehead trips off in September. We had just like a little bit of a cooling front come through,
Hmm.
and we were struggling pretty hard. Like I think the first week of September, we did really well, had a bit of a cooling front come through, and it was really hard. And again, I'm sure it probably stabled out at that point. I think they just want more like stable weather conditions. I think anytime you get any kind of like abrupt kind of change, they just kind of shut off. It's kind of odd. So that's why spring fishing for them sometimes can be weird if you have this like volatile weather. You can certainly catch them. You can certainly catch them in the fall as well. I think you just want to look for good, consistent weather patterns.
Gotcha.
And then with gar and bowfin, I probably the same thing. I probably cut it off around September. I think it can still be good through October for both those fish.
Right.
I kind of stopped guiding for them around September. So it goes, May through mid-September, I'll say.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's so you're 1.5 months, 2 months in now. So July and August are some pretty hot times, I'm assuming, because we get a lot of, as you said, stable weather, typically just hot, humid, and, so that kind of gives you that weather that you're looking for there.
Exactly. It's gotten better and better. I think early season snakehead this year, so like late May, early June was tough. It was hard.
Right.
Fish were spawning, not consistent weather, but I swear it was like once that really hot weather set in, it was just game on.
And then once you're into the beginning of fall, do you switch back into some stripers, or you like immediately we're going upland hunting and that's where my game is now?
Yeah, like September, and I mean, really September through like beginning of November is again kind of just a crazy time of year where I'm doing a little bit of everything. We do these saltwater fly fishing classes in the fall, so
Mm-hmm.
we're doing those almost, I think, for like a month. We do them every weekend in Virginia Beach, which is great. Been doing some striped bass and then largemouth stuff in the fall as well. The bass fishing gets really, really good in September and October on fly because we're throwing a lot of topwater bugs. So those are great, like beginner style trips. But I've had people of all skill levels come out for those bass trips in the fall because the action's pretty hot and it's pretty much exclusively topwater. We're throwing dragonflies, boogle bugs, almost, kind of like smallmouth fishing, just more, on a lake or on a tidal system.
Right.
A lot of
I brought up the on your website because you mentioned the saltwater classes.
Yeah.
They're posted for people to join October 19th, 2025, and also October 26th, 2025. And you and Simone, you guys, I mean, do a heck of a job with this. It's an 8-hour class. You're out on it's instruction, and then it's 4 hours of fishing. I mean, it really is. It's almost one-on-one. I mean, there's 4 guides and eight people. It's incredible. It really is good stuff.
It's a super fun time. There's a lot that goes into it, and I'll shout out Simone here. That's kind of his brainchild, and he's done such a good job with the curriculum there. He kind of handles most of like the classroom
Right.
portion. He's got some really good info, and then we have Simone, myself, Captain Keegan Lemke, and then Captain Wayne McMasters of Tidewater on the Fly. I'll go out and take all the participants to fish for a half day after that. And I mean, I think we did 3 or 4 of them last year. And I mean, during the half days, everyone caught plenty of fish. The speckled trout gets so thick in the lower bay that time of year. It's like you just find that school and you're catching fish every cast. It's great.
makes it fun for sure. Just to bring people up to speed here, of course, it's currentculturefly.com. That's where you can find out about the guides. And there's Reid Parker, and you can learn about the waters that he fishes: James, Rappahannock, York, Pamunkey, Mattaponi, the different types of fish. We just talked about gar, snakehead, bowfin. You do largemouth, smallmouth, as you said. Guided trips. You can go into the different types, the warm water. And of course, on the bottom left is the request a trip. And there you go. You can do the, there it is, fishing for northern snakehead, long-nosed gar, warm water species, and then even the hunting is there. You got it all going on.
It's all there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really incredible. So you're busy. How are things right now? Are there some openings in your schedule for people who are listening, watching, that want to get out for gar, bowfin, and snakehead?
There are, yeah. So I've got some late July. Most of this, like front half of July, is pretty booked, but I've got some late July, and then pretty flexible in August right now. And August is a great time to get out. That's kind of, that's kind of peak season, to be honest.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'd say, August is when kind of this. July and August are my favorite 2 months. June can be kind of moody sometimes, but like you said, July and August is really consistent conditions. So the fishing tends to be pretty good for those species that time of year.
Awesome. Well, hey, Reid, I can't thank you enough for joining me. As we talked about it before the show, you were on last year at this time when we first started Off the Hook with Matty D. You were then on with your dad. You haven't been on since then. And we talked about upland hunting. I've got to have you on more. So as long as you're good with that, I'm going to call you up as many times as possible.
I'm great with it, man. Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's fantastic. I'm gonna let me just finish up here real quick. Once again, we've been talking with Reid Parker, and if you want to know more, you can go to currentculturefly.com again to learn more about the waters that he fishes. He's under our guides, the classes and events. Of course, the 2 classes that he talked about: the saltwater classes, October 19th, 2025, October 26th, 2025. Hey, and don't forget, this is a big thing that they do. The Panfish tournament, which is a lot of fun, is going to happen. The date has been picked, hasn't been posted here yet. And of course, you can request a trip, and there's so many different trips there. But there's the long-nosed gar, the snakehead, warm water species, and of course, the upland hunting, pintail hunts, and so much more. So check it out. Again, it's currentculturefly.com. Again, my guest today has been Reid Parker from Current Culture Fly, talking about gar, long-nosed gar, bowfin, and snakeheads. And we'll see you again for another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Off the Hook with Matty D.